In my short time of working with Dr. Soren Kaplan, I can tell you I like this guy. So I just have a very brief introduction for you. Soren Kaplan is the author of an award-winning and Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Leapfrogging, and is a leading expert in business strategy and innovation. He formerly led the strategy group at HP in the Silicon Valley. He has founded and advises startups and consults to companies like Cisco, Disney, Red Bull, Visa, Kimberly-Clark, Medtronic, and Philips. He writes for Fast Company, is an affiliated professor at the Center for Effective Organizations at USC's Marshall School of Business, and has been featured on NPR, Forbes, Investors Business Daily, and CNBC. My favorite point here, something that he's most proud of, when he was 13, he won the first ever video game contest, one of the first ever contests, on the Commodore 64 computer. Yeah. Dr. Kaplan.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start out my presentation in Paris. How many of you have been to Paris? I just want to get a feel. Oh, a lot of you have been to Paris. Terrific. So 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to give my family I travel the world for what I do, and I wanted to give my two daughters, my wife, my daughters were 9 and 11 at the time, I wanted to give them kind of a cultural experience. So I can work from anywhere, so we decided move to Paris for a year. I wanted to write my book, Leapfrogging, and I felt like that would be a good place to do it. And we moved there, put my two daughters, they were 9 and 11, into public French school when they didn't speak any French at all, which was kind of traumatic. My daughter, who was 9, after we were there for 2 weeks, she put 2 words in English together I had never heard before in the same sentence. Paris sucks. I thought I was the hero of the family, but it sucked for her and for everyone for a little while because it really challenged our assumptions about how you what do you do when you go to the grocery store? How do you get along? And it was a different culture. different environment. All the rules were different, subtle, but different. So that was an amazing year. And one of the things that happened during that year, which was kind of part of my own personal leadership journey, is that one day I wandered into this little cafe. It's called Caféotech. How many cafes and bistros would you guess are in Paris? 1 million? Maybe a little less than that. There are actually, I did research on this after I had this experience. There's 35,000 bistros and cafes in Paris. 35,000. Small little, small city, relatively small city. 35,000 of these things. Wandered into this one, opened my laptop to start writing my book, and took a sip of this coffee, which completely blew me away. It was the richest, the boldest, the creamiest coffee I had ever had. And it just stopped me in my tracks. And I kind of sat there for a second. Then I look up on the wall, and there's this New York Times travel article that basically said, if you're going to Paris from the US, be sure to visit the Arc de Triomphe, the Eiffel Tower, and Caféotech, this little cafe. Then I look next to it, and there's this kind of food critic article about all the best food in Paris. He lives in Paris. And he's basically saying Caféotech is the #1 coffee in all of Paris. So I'm sitting inside of this, the best coffee out of 35,000 bistros and cafes, kind of by accident, kind of like a breakthrough innovation. And I'm writing about breakthrough innovations and innovation culture and how do you do kind of the big breakthroughs. And I needed to learn more. So what I did is I walked up to the owner. Her name's Gloria. She's in the slide right here. And I basically said, what are you doing to be #1 out of 35,000? So she told me her story. So her story became the introduction of my book, essentially, because it really represents an amazing kind of illustration of what's possible. This is not Starbucks. This is basically a woman who moved to Paris. She's South American, but she speaks French and Spanish and English. So she moves to Paris and realizes that she wants to bring something to Paris that Paris hasn't experienced, which is what she thinks is her purpose is to share the nobility of coffee. Okay, well, what does that mean? Nobility of coffee? Well, here's what she does. In her little cafe, she goes out around the world and visits farmers who own plantations, and she visits them and she asks them for their best beans, and then ensures that they'll get a fair trade price for their beans. So that's one thing she does. And then she comes back and she roasts those beans and only serves coffee from an individual plantation, like you might have wine. Her coffee looks like a work of art, basically, and it's pretty expensive. And what's happened over time is that it's so amazing, the experience there is so amazing, is that budding baristas from around the world have decided that they want to learn what she does. So they've called her up and said, teach us what you do. So instead of kind of hoarding her beans, what she does is she decided, okay, I'm going to open up Caféotech University. Okay, well, what's that? So baristas come from around the world. They study under her for a week for a couple thousand euros. And then they work for her for free for 2 months in the cafe as free labor. And then what happens is they go off and start their own cafes around France. And you could say that that's competition. But where do you think they buy their coffee beans from? Gloria. She sells them their coffee beans too. What she also does is she makes sure that the people who are working for her, who are there for full-time baristas, they go and they visit the plantations as well. So they see where it's coming from. And she's created a whole environment that's really about the experience of coffee. She in addition to Caféotech University, she does coffee tastings. So you can have a flight of coffee, you pay about $40, and you take a bunch of sips, and then you're totally wired at the end of that. But it's an amazing experience. So, you're drinking coffee now, but it's a little bit of a different experience. So what she's done in that cafe is created kind of a culture focused on giving people an amazing experience, plus she's got an incredible business model. It's product, it's service, it's distribution. This is happening all in a little place in Paris called Caféotech. So I use this as just an illustration. It's not about big company Starbucks or anything like that. Anyone in any organization, no matter how big, you're big, but in your department, in your team, can do similar things. And I'm going to show you how that works. Now, I need to dispel a few kind of issues around innovation. These are the big breakthroughs that we hear about all the time: iPhone, iPad, Netflix. When we think about innovation, typically these are things that come to mind because they're all over the press, and they've really changed the game in a lot of ways. But that's not all that innovation is, and so I think it kind of gets in the way sometimes. Now, how many of you have read an innovation book, article, blog in the last 6 months? Just want to kind of, something about innovation. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much all out there. So you think there's so many resources out there, you think we'd have it right. And you know that we have seen, the casualties of disruptive innovation. I mean, think about it. 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, how many of you had Blockbuster cards? Blockbuster, like we all had Blockbuster cards. We're getting videos. There was a Borders in this town at one time, was there not? Borders Books? Borders Books had 10% of all the books in the US going through them as a distribution channel. Today they're gone. Are you guys using Blackberries here? You won't admit it if you are, okay. But, the Blackberry challenge. My 16-year-old daughter doesn't even know what Encyclopedia Britannica is. I mean, think about it. Doesn't even know. So when you look at the casualties of disruptive innovation, we know innovation is important, and there's a very important lesson to be learned when you look at these casualties. I mean, think about it. Blockbuster, Borders, Encyclopedia Britannica. Never start a company with the letter B is one of the key strategies for innovation. There's no research underlying that, so don't worry about it, and you're in good shape. There actually is a dynamic that happens, though, from a leadership standpoint and from an organizational standpoint around innovation. And so I'm going to illustrate this by showing you a video. What you're going to see is a guy does a card trick. He turns a deck of cards, I think it's from blue to red or red to blue. It's about 30 seconds long. I'm going to show you the trick, and at the end of the card trick, I'm just going to ask you a simple question. How did he do the trick? Okay? Take a look.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
All right, so how do you think he did the trick? What are your hypotheses? The camera panned away and he just grabbed another deck? Brilliant. Any other hypotheses? The background, what? The backdrop changed colors, so they're kind of trying to confuse you a little bit. Is that what you're saying? What did you say over here? It looked like a different lady? Okay. Any other hypotheses? Her shirt changed color. How many of you think these people are crazy? So take a look at part 2, because actually there was something going on in that video outside of the card trick. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. What I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the three of diamonds.
The three of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing color-changing card trick.
So how many of you each got one? Did anybody get two of those? Two? Did you get more than two? So you got two of them. Anybody else get more than two? So I've shown this to thousands of people, and only probably 3 or 4 have ever gotten all 4 of those. Why did you miss the color changes? Yeah, the word focus, right? Yeah. So when you think about most organizational cultures, most organizations are focused. You have to focus on your quarterly results, your annual goals. But when you're focused, those things that could be right in front of you, those trends, those emerging customer needs, those threats and opportunities can actually be invisible to you. Now, it gets a little bit worse as well. So I'm going to show you another little innovation quiz. How many F's are in the sentence below? I want you to count. If there's a sentence, I want you to count the number of times the letter F shows up. Do not count that F. I am not trying to trick you with that one, okay? So just count the number of F's. Ready, go. Okay. How many of you, I think I saw someone taking a picture of that. Is it like, was somebody doing that over here? All right, you're going to go back and check. Okay, so how many of you counted, no more, no less, a total number of 3 F's? 3, raise your hand. Okay, a few of you. 4 F's, raise your hand. Handful of you. 5 F's, handful of you. 6 F's, handful of you over here. 7 F's, okay, 8 F's. 9, almost a perfect distribution, you guys. Pretty good. Pull up that picture. The answer is 8. The answer is 8. So which ones did you miss? If you missed them, which ones did you miss? The ofs, right? Yeah, everybody misses the ofs. Now, the reason you miss the ofs is because your brain sees the word of as an image and not as a word. As an image, because it's so commonplace and your brain is trying to simplify life for you because there's so much noise out there and information coming at you. It skips right over it because it sees it as an image, and it's filtering for you all the time. So you combine the fact that we're focused, our brains are filtering for us. What does that do to innovation? What does that do to the ability to think creatively and strategically and see those things out there that are changing the world so you don't become a B company? So that's the challenge. And there's yet another challenge, because when it comes to innovation, you can basically look at this quote from the CEO of Apple, which has arguably been, and maybe still is, one of the most innovative companies in the world, basically saying there is no formula or process for innovation. There's no formula or process for innovation. So if Apple's saying that, and they're the most innovative company in the world, what can anyone do to innovate? What do you do? Well, there are some principles that I'm going to share with you. Some of the things that I want to highlight about creating a culture of innovation, because the way that you can innovate on a consistent basis isn't about creating a product and then just innovating off of that. Competitive advantage these days is temporary. So your products, your services, your business models will become obsolete one day. But what the competitive advantage is, that companies that recognize that everything goes through a life cycle, it's about culture. Culture is really the only semi-sustainable competitive advantage. So if you focus on that as your competitive advantage, there's a number of things you can do to try to foster a culture of innovation. The challenge is the things that might work for those innovation untouchables, Apple, Google, Facebook, might not work or might even hinder innovation in other cultures. So you have to approach innovation culture in your own way. So I'm going to share some principles around that. Now, if you think about most companies, it starts with values. I mean, really, think about the values of your organization, any organization. Innovation, behavior is shaped by values. So I'm going to share with you these values, and I'm going to give you another innovation quiz, and I'm going to ask you which company do these values belong to. So take a look. Communication. We have an obligation to communicate. Here's the one I like. We believe that information is meant to move and that information moves people. Respect. Treat others like we want to be treated ourselves. Integrity. This is the one that I like. We work with customers and prospects, even prospects, openly, honestly. And excellence. We want to have fun and for all of us to discover just how great we can be. So when you think about these values, here's your question. Lockheed Martin, one of your competitors. How many of you, so I want you to pick which company these values belong to. So think about it. I'm going to ask you in about 3 seconds who you're voting for. How many of you think these values are from Lockheed Martin? No one. Okay. Facebook. 1, 2, 3. Ford. Car company. Uber. Uber, innovative. Bank of America. A few of you. So the correct answer is Enron. So what does that say? It doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you do. That's what it says. All right, so I'm going to make another point about culture. Culture, there's a lot of definitions, or there's certain definitions of culture. I look at culture as the unwritten norms and values, unwritten, that shape behavior. And you can have norms and values that shape behavior towards innovation, or you can have norms and values that shape behavior away from innovation. So I'm going to share with you a video that'll kind of make this point. How many of you have seen Candid Camera, the old version of Candid Camera? Yeah, so I love Candid Camera. Take a look at this video.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a Candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the Candid subject. Here comes the Candid Camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before. Here's a fella with his hat on in the elevator. First he makes a full turn to the rear and Charlie closes the door. A moment later, we'll open the door. Everybody's changed positions. Now we'll see if we can use group pressure for some good. Now, in a moment, on Charlie's signal, everybody turns forward. Notice they take off their hats. And now, do you think we could reverse the procedure? Watch.
Is that terrifying or what? I mean, really, that's terrifying. However, maybe not these elevators because they're glass, but if you go into most elevators, those same norms, even from 50 years ago, are still at play in elevators today. So culture, persists, and so we have there's a challenge and an opportunity to shift culture so it benefits our innovation strategy. And so I'm going to share with you, when you think about how culture is created, it's actually a pretty simple loop. People have experiences in their lives around them. Those experiences basically communicate assumptions about what's valued, what's not valued, what's good behavior, what's bad behavior. And then those assumptions, people go with those assumptions in terms of what they should do, so they behave according to those assumptions. So it's a cycle. It's a simple cycle. So how do you get more innovation? How do you get less resistance? Or how do you get risk-taking? You change experiences for people. You change experiences very consciously. And so really, when you think about creating a culture of innovation, it's really about thinking very consciously about the kinds of things you can do to change people's experiences so you get more innovation. And so that's really what we're talking about. So how many of you have ever been in meetings and somebody throws out an idea and you hear, we tried that before 10 years ago. Well, we don't have time to innovate. Innovation's just not rewarded around here. Those are the things that shape assumptions about, do we really want ideas? Are we going to do anything with those ideas? And then shape behavior, because if you hear that over and over again, no one's even going to share an idea. So that's the kind of dynamic I'm talking about. Here's an example. Here's an example around how very subtle things can stifle innovation. And then I'm going to share with you the whole flip side around a whole bunch of things you can do to get more innovation. So I was working with a client. They asked me to come in and assess their innovation culture. Do a bunch of interviews, survey, talk to people, and figure out why we're not getting the kind of innovation we want to get. So did that, and I heard a story over and over again. One of the stories was, this was a company where people would go out and kind of in the field, they'd have to buy lunch because they'd be out all day, and then they'd come back and they'd submit, this is a real example, they'd submit a receipt for the ham sandwich they bought. So they'd go, they'd submit the receipt, and their processes had kind of evolved over time into kind of this black hole. So what happened was people would submit their receipt to their manager. They'd kind of have to fill out this form, sign it. Their manager would look at it, sign it, give it back to the employee, who would then submit it to finance, who then would go through a couple steps in finance, get it back to the manager who'd see the approval. Then they'd hand it back to the employee, and the employee would then need to go to the petty cash person who was open for 1 hour a week so you get reimbursed for your ham sandwich. So that was just kind of, there's another term, it's just the way things are done around here. It was kind of accepted that that's just the way things were done around here. Well, the person who told me the ham sandwich story said to me, if I can't be trusted with getting reimbursed for a ham sandwich, why should I trust leadership with my ideas? So the ham sandwich reimbursement was getting in the way of innovation, basically, which kind of sounds silly, but those are the subtle little things that can get in the way of innovation. So the question is, how do you identify those things? And that organization dealt with it, and then is doing other things to get more innovation, and that's what we really want to talk about. So I'm going to share with you 3 strategies for getting more innovation. And if you're leaders and you're managing people, these are all that more important in terms of things you can do. So the first strategy, be intentional with your innovation intent. So what does that mean? Be intentional with your innovation intent. Let me tell you a quick story. I love the fact that there was a check register shared a few minutes ago, because this is about check writing. So how many of you have used Intuit's product, Quicken or TurboTax or one of those? Okay, so a number of you. So Scott Cook, who founded Intuit, basically launched Quicken, which basically was a way to balance your checkbook at home. If you're a personal, write a check, you balance your checkbook at home. Well, something started happening to the executive team. They were getting back market research that said half of their customers were small businesses. But they knew that was impossible because small businesses needed real accounting software, and if they were using Quicken, it would be the wrong software for the wrong purpose, and it would actually be kind of illegal to do that because it wouldn't work for their taxes. And so they ignored that information. So those are like those color changes that are right in front of you that you're ignoring because you're so focused. After a year of ignoring that, they said, well, maybe we should go out and talk to some small businesses to see what they might be doing with our software. They went out. Half of the customers were small businesses using the wrong software in the wrong way because it was easy. It was easy to use, even though it was the wrong thing for their business. So what they realized is that, well, maybe that small business accounting market that they thought was saturated, there's an opportunity there. So they created something called QuickBooks. Within 3 months, they had 70% share of the small business accounting market. 3 months. Because they listened to a surprise that they had ignored. They savored that surprise, kind of like, wandering into a little cafe and being surprised. So today, they have an innovation intent. In their culture, they talk about savoring surprise. They want everyone to savor surprise, and they do that with this mission in mind. And this is from their corporate office, mission, vision, all that stuff. But here's what their mission is: to improve our customers' financial lives so profoundly they can't imagine going back to the old way. And it's not just people who are making their products. This is everyone in their organization understands what they're in business to do. So what you want to do, basically, is frame the way you want to change the world and make it your intentions about who you're serving. How many of you are serving an internal customer or your business partner? You're like an internal service organization. Okay, so a number of you. Because your customers are also inside too. There's just as, I talk about customers in both respects. And when you go to Intuit, so do they. So for example, this is their Innovation Wall of Fame. They celebrate the innovators. And they celebrate products, that make money, because that's, they're in the business to make money. And so they have product, people who have been on the Hall of Fame because they've innovated there. But they also have people who are like in HR. This is recruiting. So in the tech world, recruiting smart young tech people out of college is really difficult. There's a lot of competition for that talent. So what they've done is they've gone out and used kind of this innovation jam methodology that they have, which I'll share with you in a moment, that basically it's like a brainstorming session with prototyping, and they do this inside their company. They've brought it to college campuses, and they get college students who are interested in jobs and internships to come into a room like this. And it's all about innovation. It's not an interview. It's actually solving real problems that the company has so that they can give the college students an experience of what it's like to work at Intuit. And then they can evaluate the students at the same time and how they're innovative they are and what they do. And then they offer them internships and then jobs. It's an innovation in the recruiting process. And they're celebrating that on their wall. Here's another one. This is the IT department. So when I was at HP, we'd call up IT if my computer's broken, and I'd say, I need some help, and then I'd wait there for 2 weeks until the IT group came out. That's not your experience, it sounds like, either. This is the IT innovation where they basically said, let's create the techno bar, like the Apple Genius bar, the techno bar, in every building. So if you have a problem, you just come down and the techno genius helps you instantly. That's the IT department. So that won an award. So innovation is for everyone, whether you're an internal function or you're focused on customers. Now, it kind of starts with this kind of age-old premise. If you're in the drill business and you're manufacturing drills for construction, you're actually not in the drill business. What business are you in? The whole business, correct. Because your customers don't care about the drill. They actually want the end result, which is the whole. So part of the innovation intent thinking is, what do our customers really care about? They probably don't care about our product. They care about the result of the product, the value that it provides to them. And so how do we think about our innovation intent in terms of what we're trying to do for our customers and making their lives better, whether it's internal customers or external, from that lens so that we can frame up how do we really want to make a difference for them and then get everyone on board with how to do that. And so I'm not going to go through all this, but every function can and should have its own innovation intent because innovation will mean something different for finance, IT, HR, legal. So depending on if you're in finance, perhaps your job is to bring financial insight to leadership to make strategic decisions about market opportunities. That's very different than balancing the books. Or if you're in HR, you're growing talent for the next generation of leadership to differentiate the company. That's very different than managing your health plan only. So that's the kind of thinking we're looking for. So that's being intentional with the innovation intent. Number 2, step in and then step back. So what does that mean? That basically means when you're thinking about creating a culture of innovation, you want to create a structure, give people a structure for unstructured innovation. Because remember, there's no tried and true formula and process that'll get you breakthrough innovation every time. It's an unstructured process, but you can create a structure around it. So how do you do that? So one of the first ways is you can give people tools in a toolkit. So at Intuit, every employee has access to this toolkit. And they've actually made it freely available to the world. So if you type in Intuit Catalyst Toolkit, you can find this document. It's 5 pages long. Every employee has the tools to innovate. It's a very simple document. There's various templates and things in there as well that everybody has access to. And then there's Adobe, who has the Kickbox. That's what they call it. Any employee can get a Kickbox that has innovation tools in it and a process guide. And in that Kickbox is a Starbucks gift card, because you're going to be up at night drinking coffee, innovating, and a gift card, a Visa gift card for $1,000. Not that that's the best practice, but what their point is that anyone who gets that Kickbox and goes through the training, they've trained maybe, anyone can do it, but they've probably trained maybe a couple hundred people, has $1,000 to go and create prototypes through online ads or other things. They don't brand it as Adobe, so you might see a Google ad out there for a product that doesn't even exist, and when you click it, it goes nowhere, because they're testing to see what interesting ideas are out there. So they're spending their $1,000 to do tests, unconstrained by the corporate infrastructure around submitting a, kind of a expense report for the Google AdWord test that went nowhere, because that wouldn't fly in a lot of companies. And then you have companies like Atlassian, which is in Australia, that basically gives everyone a FedEx day. So what's that? Once a year, any employee can take a day off. But just like FedEx, you have to deliver something the next day. You have to deliver an idea, a prototype, a PowerPoint, whatever, that is your innovation that you're proposing to the company. So they've made it freely available for anyone to take a day off. You don't have to remake the corporate time clock. Getting innovation doesn't mean you have to remake the corporate time clock from the standpoint of giving everybody 10% time. It could just mean 20 minutes once every 2 weeks in a staff meeting, you're asking for innovation, new ideas, and you're not, and you're role modeling kind of the encouragement and the execution of some of the quick hit ideas as well. Other ways to create a structure. Intuit does customer office hours. So what's that? Once a month, because they've asked everyone to innovate, and getting close to the customer is so important for innovation, they actually bring customers into a room. They sit them in front of anyone who wants to come into the room, and basically you can ask them any question you want to ask them. Show them ideas, ask what keeps them up at night, whatever, so that you're bringing customers inside so that people can innovate. So it's creating a structure for that. They also do these things called follow me homes. It sounds like a little creepy, but it's not. Follow me homes basically are customers who have agreed to let employees from Intuit come in and observe how they kind of manage their household, because they do taxes and finance and all that. So it's kind of opening up the window into people's kind of financial lives at home. And they get a lot of kind of insight from that as well that drives innovation. Now, the other principle, though, is that you need to help people experiment so that you can fail fast. Now, the biggest challenge with innovation is that usually the first ideas are really ugly. And it's really hard to tell someone that their baby is ugly. But the idea here is that you want to be able to kind of know my idea is going to be ugly coming out of the gate, and it's okay. So anybody know what that is? Say it louder. It is. It's the first prototype of the mouse. That's right. So that's one of the first prototypes of the computer mouse. Looks kind of ugly, right? I mean, that's not what the mouse ended up looking like. But typically, early stage ideas don't look like they end up. So, we have to be open to that, and to kind of fail fast to succeed sooner is kind of the buzzword. A great example of that, anybody shop at Zappos? Zappos? Yeah. So Zappos kind of made it big by selling shoes on the internet. I mean, early on, who would think about buying shoes? You have to try on shoes, don't you? So they made it big, but the way that they tested their idea is really interesting. They didn't create a huge warehouse and get all this inventory. All they did is they went to shoe stores that existed, took photos of the shoes, stuck them online in like this fake web store, and then tracked clicks to see if people would actually click on it and maybe purchase it or try to purchase it. That's a prototype. And so it's not creating a whole business and getting all this funding and doing that. It's actually creating something small scale that you can test and learn from and test your biggest assumptions, which in this case, will people actually be interested, first off, and even buy shoes on the internet? So that's really what testing and learning is about. All right, last one from a leadership angle, get symbolic. So I'm going to share, just to kind of give you a prelude to what's coming down the pipe. I've got just 20 minutes here. 10 minutes or so on what does it mean to get symbolic as leaders, and what you can do, even if you're not managing people, how you can use symbols to drive innovation. Then I'll kind of open it up if there's any questions or clarifications on anything. And then for the last 5 minutes, at 7:55, a few of you may have an opportunity to win a highly valuable prize. Highly valuable prize. If you've been paying attention. There's a little innovation quiz at the end to see if you're paying attention. All right. So get symbolic is your third strategy for creating a culture of innovation. Get symbolic. Now, what does get symbolic mean? Get symbolic basically means that you want to define what you're looking for from an innovation standpoint, and then shape or reshape assumptions around it, because assumptions lead to behavior. And so you want to create experiences that change assumptions, shift assumptions, so you get the kind of behavior you're looking for. So one of probably the biggest symbols of hierarchy in an organization is the parking spot. Parking spot. I don't know if you have parking spots for special people or not. The parking spots you want to create are the people who are the innovators, no matter what level or function in the organization. Those are the parking spots you want. But, every symbol in an organization communicates what's valued and what's not valued, what's accepted and what's not accepted, and then impacts behavior. So, some examples. Again, going back to Intuit, in their corporate office, sits the table at which Scott Cook came up with the idea for Quicken, the table. And on the table is a plaque that basically says, we want every employee to freely use this table for your brainstorming sessions. And around that table are whiteboards that anyone can use, sit down at the original innovation table, and come up with ideas and work as a team. That's a symbol, that's a request for innovation. Other companies like Netflix do little things. They name their offices, or not their offices. Netflix names their meeting rooms after blockbuster movies to kind of keep the theme, that they're in the blockbuster business. Not exactly. They killed Blockbuster, but they're in the business of kind of entertainment. Anybody know who this is? His quote was in the video that you saw. This is Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker, one of the most prolific management thinkers in the world ever, has said, what's measured improves. So if you focus on it and you measure it and you ask people for it, you get it. So an example is Kentucky Fried Chicken. Anybody ever had Kentucky Fried Chicken? Yeah. We all have had Kentucky Fried Chicken. But Yum Brands, who owns Kentucky Fried Chicken about 10 years ago, was basically saying, our growth has stopped in the US, and how are we going to grow as a corporation? And so they created a single metric. They basically said, we want to increase profits from international business. And they basically had the entire organization, understanding that that's where their focus was, as well as Wall Street. And so they went into China. And today, their profits from the international markets have gone up from 20% to 70%. And they go into China, and you can't exactly just sell Kentucky Fried Chicken and biscuits in China. It doesn't exactly translate. So they have to innovate all this other, kind of street food and other things. So by creating a metric, it has this cascading ripple effect around what you have to do, how you need to innovate in order to achieve that metric. Very simple. They had one metric around that. There's other things you can do. Anybody in facilities here? No? So I've done a little work with this Facilities Management Association, and some of their organizations have set up metrics around efficiency. And by essentially innovating the vacuum cleaner, literally, I was told by having someone wear a vacuum cleaner on their back, they get 30% more efficiency in the speed at which they can clean a building. That's innovation. It still is innovation. It's not breakthrough disruptive innovation, but it's innovation that can make a difference. Now, there's other things that you can do around symbols. You can give people rewards, but the most valuable rewards are worthless rewards. It's not money that motivates. It's really the symbolic, kind of valueless rewards, like wooden nickels. So I had an opportunity to work with Colgate-Palmolive. They have 1,000 people in their technology group in Piscataway, New Jersey. And a couple engineers, managers, they were kind of, in Colgate, a couple of their managers who were managing kind of technology people basically had this big project, a bunch of people contributed, and they went online and got a bunch of wooden nickels and handed them out as kind of perks, gifts at the end of this project as a kind of a joke. Well, those people took their wooden nickels, and when other people would contribute to their projects, they gave them some of the wooden nickels. Then people bought more wooden nickels, and it's not uncommon to get back from lunch and you sit at your desk and there's wooden nickels on your desk as a thank you for a job well done. They've created a recognition economy in their organization. And that's based not on a financial reward at the end of the year. It's based on kind of this token economy around kind of meaningful symbols, these wooden nickels. There's other ways in which you need to define norms. This is kind of how you can stop getting the bad stuff. So this one company, and you ever been in a meeting with a group of people? You have the meeting, you make all these decisions, and then you come back the next week, and for some reason, you're talking about all the same things you talked about the week before and making the same decisions over again. Has that ever happened to anybody? This company was tired of that, and so they created the no rehash paddle. So when anyone hears we're rehashing this thing, anyone can just kind of raise the paddle and go, we're rehashing, and then you move on. They're creating a norm around avoiding the kind of behavior that slows things down. Totally reasonable to do that. And then you want to celebrate your successes and failures. This company is called Space Saver. Probably never heard of them. They're in Wisconsin, and they make a lot of kind of storage racks for books and libraries and military storage and things like that. This is in their factory last week, and I saw this gong, and I asked the plant manager, what is this gong? And he basically said, well, when something good happens, we hit the gong. I go, all right, that's kind of interesting. So I was actually in another whole office, and I was telling someone that I saw this gong. And I said, do you know what that gong is? And he said, yeah, when something good happens, we hit the gong. It's like everyone knows that when something good happens, they hit the gong. So that gong becomes a symbol of what people want more of. And the good stuff is about innovation, about customer service. But you also want to celebrate the failures, because this whole notion that risk-taking and failure and all that, ideally, failure, when you try something out and it doesn't work, it's about learning. And so the most innovative companies basically look at failure as an opportunity to have learned something, and then, of course, not do that again, but leverage that. So there's companies that have failure parties. You once a month, there's a lunch where you talk about things that failed and what you learned from them so you can apply it later. building in kind of a tolerance for failure is all about helping with that risk-taking. Now, creating a line of sight is also important. So not everybody has direct interaction with customers. This is Space Saver. This is their warehouse. These are the kind of things they make, big military racks for guns and library shelves. But if you look up at the top right, there's a little poster, or a big poster. And that big poster basically talks about what they're doing at the Field Museum in Chicago. Space Saver is basically helping the Field Museum store dinosaur bones and artifacts that the public gets to enjoy and see and learn about. And so all the way down to the individual who's soldering, the next product that's going to be in this big industrial, warehouse, they also know that their work is helping the Field Museum with their artifacts. So you're creating a line of sight to the value being created by whatever you're doing. That's really essential for innovation. So I'm going to pause there. We have we have 10 more minutes until the top of the hour. I'm going to just open it up. If there's any questions or observations, or you want me to react to something that you've heard, you want me to embellish on it, that's fine. And then the last 5 will be the innovation quiz, where a few of you may win a highly valuable prize if you stick around. So I'll just open it up. Any questions, comments, observations? Yes? Okay, so embellishing on the whole concept of innovation metrics. You get what you measure. You get what you measure, which basically means you can decide the kinds of things that you measure to get innovation. So, for example, we're going to measure the percent of revenues from new products or services introduced in the last 3 years. Because if you start measuring that and you want a greater percentage, you're going to basically drive people to say, well, wait, we need to increase the number of new products that are in the market that are actually contributing to our overall revenue. So that would be an example. Or the number of people who are actually trained in and given innovation tools. So that would expand the pool of those who have skill sets for innovation. So if you tie certain metrics to both the inputs of innovation in terms of what do you need to, from your process to your skills to your people to leadership, if you look at kind of those things that you can measure around the inputs, and then the outputs, the results you're looking for, those are the kinds of things. And there's actually, if you're interested, there's an article I wrote for Fast Company all on that. In my next book, The Invisible Advantage, I have a whole chapter on innovation metrics as well. Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes? Yeah, so that was introduced by they're a small company. It was introduced by their CEO, who was so frustrated with this rehashing. Very collaborative CEO, wanted everybody's input. But the flip side of input and consensus is slowness. And so that was getting in the way. And so the CEO basically said, let's come up with I think it was just kind of an organic thing. They had this silly idea to put it on a paddle and just say no rehash. Sometimes the silly things that are just tried out stick. And so you can be conscious about it, or you can be kind of flippant about it, and then it sticks, but it actually worked for them. Any other questions or comments? You guys ready to win a highly valuable prize? Yes. Okay, here's the deal. This is the dating game theme, by the way, just to confirm what you were thinking. Okay, so here's the deal. I am going to ask you a series of questions. I'm going to basically put up a question, or ask you a question, and you need to be the first person to yell out the correct answer so I hear it. So if you're in the back there, like far back, and you're whispering the correct answer, I'm not going to hear you. You're not going to get a point, and then you're not going to get the highly valuable prize. So we need you to kind of use your vocal cords here. Okay, here's the easy question first. WD-40. How many failures did they have before they got it right? 39. I heard it right here, but I was close to Matt, so I'm going to move away from Matt. But Matt gets a point. Okay. That is correct. So WD-40, they were trying to create this formula. It's called water displacement. And they failed 39 times and then kept going one more time, which is why it's called WD-40 and not 39. But basically, they had to persist for 40 times. So, being able to kind of overcome failure and keep going is a key message. All right, next question. Wikipedia is one of the top 10 most visited websites every single day. How many entries did Wikipedia have in its first 2 years of existence? 30, 1,000, 600, 2, 400,000, 1. Who said 30? Who said 30? Somebody said 30. You said 30. What is your name? Margaret. Okay, Margaret is the closest. They had 24 entries. So the whole idea here, Jimmy Wales, who started Wikipedia, basically said, I'm going to create the most robust encyclopedia in the world online. He found the leading expert in a number of topics at universities, and then created a 7-step review process so that each step would validate the information, and he'd pay people along the way. And after 2 years and $250,000, he had 24 entries. Didn't exactly work. Failed business model. But then they decided, rather than just turn it off, why don't we just open it up? Do this thing called kind of open source it. And it turned into Wikipedia. A failed business model turned into Wikipedia. Okay. So a point and a point, right? Okay. Mr. Wrigley did not start out selling gum. Mr. Wrigley started out selling something else. What was it? Hopefully you use it every day. Soap. Soap. What's your name? Derek. Correct is soap. I love the toilet paper answer, though. That was a good one. No one's competitive in here, I can tell. Okay. Mr. Wrigley was selling soap and baking soda and giving a piece of gum away as a perk to his customers. They liked the gum more than the soap and baking soda, so he followed that delight and then went into the gum business. That's how Wrigley came into being. All right. Next question. iPhone. How many years did it take from the idea to do the iPhone to getting it out into the market? You said like every number but the right one. Yeah, 3. Who said 3? There you go. What's your name? Okay, Mary gets a point. 3 years, which in technology is an eternity. And if you think about, we can barely, if something goes beyond your annual plan, it's like barely, it doesn't get any funding. You go by the years, right? 3 years is an eternity, but they really stuck with it. They saw the breakthrough and they persisted. So, part 2, how much did Apple invest to get that iPhone to market? To develop it and get it into market? How much? 17 million? Billion? 150,000? 1 million? 2 billion? I'd actually be surprised if you guys knew, because, Apple's so secretive. I don't know either, but it was a lot. Last question. YouTube did not start out as YouTube as we know it today. It started out as kind of a specialty website. What was this? What was, not music. Who said porn? Not porn. But you're actually kind of close. You're kind of close, actually. What was that? Who said dating? Yes, it was a dating site. What's your name? Lori. She might have been the only one to use it because it failed. So YouTube did start out as a dating site. The idea was that you'd take a video of yourself, you'd post it online, someone might see it, and then they create a video of themselves and create a link to it. Failed. So they just decided, let's just make it a video site, and that turned into YouTube. So, the moral of this story is that all these innovations have some kind of dimension to them around being unpredictable, evolving in some unexpected, surprising way. And that's really what innovation's about. And that's the kind of culture that we need to foster. If you have to have an innovation go through every single step in the same way, you're going to stifle innovation. What you want is to create an environment where it's free thinking, freewheeling, and you're providing a structure for unstructured innovation. That's the real goal. So raise your hand if you have a point. If you have a point, raise your hand. I want to see. Okay, so I don't know how valuable this is, but if you come up here, you will get a copy of my leapfrogging book. And you don't have to pay for it outside. So there you go. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You are welcome. Thanks for letting me make fun of you while I was doing that thing. I will autograph it later. Thank you. And thank you as well, Matt. And I will turn it back over to you to any final words here.